Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Answers from the Stairs, Lessons Fueled by Purpose. I'm the host, Chris Vester, and I am super excited for my guest today. We've been friends I figured it out, 2011 is when we first made contact, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. But it is my first GOAT interview. I haven't had the greatest of all time of anything on here. And if
Uh,
anybody asks me who my favorite GOAT is, it is for sure Mr. Hany Rambod. And I'm going to get into why I'm calling you the GOAT. But man, well, thank you so much, Hany, for being on my podcast here and sharing some entrepreneurial growth lessons as you climb this ladder of yours. But I appreciate you so much.
no, man,
Um,
thanks for having me. Congratulations on the podcast, brother.
Thank you, man. To let our listeners know who you are the founder and CEO of Evogen Nutrition that started in 2008. You're the creator of FST7 training program, which probably drastically shifted the way people trained years ago. Still a big force, that training platform or training program. You are a coach of 25 Olympia best athletes. That's why I said you are the GOAT. Nobody comes close to that. Seven of those being Mr. Olympia. And the host of the Truth Podcast, which is when you get people on and you just let everybody tell the truth, right? Imagine that if we actually all
Yes.
told the truth, right? Um, but yeah, that seven-time Mr. Olympia coach, but that's a massive thing. There's nobody even
Actually,
close.
it used to be seven. Now it's 11.
Oh, is it? Is it? So I even
Yeah.
didn't even give you.
Yeah. So it's seven with Phil, two with Jay, for the comeback years. That's nine. Then we had Hottie and Derek. So 10 and 11. So 11 open competitors, and then the rest were a mixed variety of, C-bum with classic physique, and then we had the combination of Jeremy Buendia, and then the girls,
Yeah,
Nicole Wilkins, and all the
yeah.
other divisions in the bodybuilding space. Yeah, it's been an amazing run, man. Very, very blessed. Very
So
blessed.
such a diverse resume, right? Big
Yeah,
diversity resume. You said you're going to get to see Jay this weekend. You know how we
yeah.
actually met was through Jay Cutler. He had been a friend of mine since 2000, and I'm sitting there recovering from two back-to-back shoulder surgeries. And I said, "Hey Jay, and to tell you how uneducated I was like, does Hani even think about working with amateurs?" And at the time, you were the quote unquote pro creator, right? You had so many guys that you had taken from the amateur level and moved them to where they were competing as a pro. And I remember joking with Farnaz when I was sitting beside you guys at the Olympian. I'm like, there's no such thing as the pro creator. He's the O creator, man. He's creating O winners. But the text message came back. This is his number, and he's expecting your call. And that was 2011. So it's been a while. It's been a while, and it was some of my most painful years and some of my best years. My definite best on stage ever. I mean, you're used to working with guys that show up on a scale of 1 to 10. They show up at about an 18, and I'm at about a 6. So you got the best out of me as a 6 as you possibly could. I want to go through this whole podcast is about the lessons and the things that you've learned through your experiences of entrepreneurship. And you are really multiple hats. Like coach is one hat you wear,
Mhm.
and then running the supplement company is another hat. But the first hat you wore was as coach because you started that while you were still in college, correct? Didn't you start coaching guys while you were in college? I
I was
want to
actually
get
right out of high school. Yeah, right out of
wow,
high school.
that's crazy. And you went
Yeah.
to the University of Santa Barbara studying microbiology. I want to get into why that's important and
Mhm.
why that's such a basis of what you do.
Sure.
But what the passion, what made you want to start like coaching people in this space?
Well, my dad was a coach, and was a soccer coach, and was the chairman of physical education in Kuwait, where I was born. And then my mother was a teacher. So we come from a, tell you, coaching, teaching background. Between the two, it was in my DNA. And when I was starting my bodybuilding journey, it started off as I wanted to be bigger to play American football, right? When I say American football, because a lot of people that follow me internationally think that I'm talking about soccer. Even though my dad was a soccer coach, soccer was not for me. Did not have, I had asthma. So what happened was I just running around the field chasing after the ball wasn't good for me. But
Right.
those 30-second, 60-second bursts of energy, I was perfectly fine. And I loved the contact.
Right.
So I wrestled and played football. I was much better at football than I was at wrestling, again, because I would get gas and didn't know it at the time how bad my asthma was. But what ended up happening was I wanted to get bigger for football, stronger. And so going into my freshman year, and then I found the weight room, and my mom had gotten me a membership at a local gym. And she's just like, okay, well, this is better than him just kind of, trolling the streets and doing nothing. And she's like, you need to be active, don't play video games and just, sit around the house. So I took my bicycle and I'd go down there, and she thought I was going to use the pool in the back of the gym. And I ended up finding my way into the weight room, and where I grew up in the San Jose Bay Area, Northern California. We had a lot of Samoans, and I ended up finding the gym with some of the biggest Samoans in all of Northern California, and we ended up starting to work out. And these guys took me under their wing, and they trained heavy and hard, and they were quite a bit older than me. They were probably in college, and maybe a couple of the brothers or cousins were in high school, but like seniors, and I was just about to become a freshman. And so, needless to say, by the time I went through the summer of my eighth grade going into my freshman year, I showed up to training camp for football that summer, and it looked like I was a junior. And these guys were all like, "What happened to you?" And I was like, "I just found the weight room, and I started working out these Samoans, and I figured out how to eat, and I learned a lot from them. And then I ended up learning a lot from the local bodybuilders that were there in terms of nutrition, supplementation, and it was something that really excited me. So that's kind of what got me into understanding training nutrition. And then when people started asking me, when they saw the transformation that I made, again, I'm turned 50 this year. We're talking about over 35 years ago. I was
Mm.
13 years old when this was all going on, 12, 13 years old when I started working out. And huge transformation, hit puberty at the same time. So everything is, all of a sudden just hit at once. And what ended up happening was that I just realized that I also liked showing people that my journey, but also taught them what I had just learned, because I was so excited about what I was able to benefit from. So it was a very natural progression. Again, also it's in our DNA. My mom was the same way. My father was the same way, and his business as well. Even after coaching and his real estate business, helping many others make a lot of money, and being able to just kind of mentor people. So I come from a teaching and coaching background.
Gotcha. Which makes a lot of sense. So having helped those guys and understanding like the basics of nutrition, the basics of training, the basics of heavy loads and all that kind of stuff, the molecular biology degree. Like I mean, I think when people hear bodybuilding, they don't think of the science behind bodybuilding until once you've done a show, you get it's a ton of science. Like it's like what are you feeding your body? How are you training? And it's all of that. What made you go molecular biology?
Okay, so when I was coaching people right out of high school and I went to junior college, I knew that I wanted to take my stab at becoming a physician. And when you're pre-med, the easiest degree to get that has fulfills all of the requirements is a biology degree. And so now there's, you can be an English major, but then you have to take a lot of different other, criteria, like your organic chemistry has to be taken. You have to take your calculus, you have to take your science courses, but all of those are mandatory for a biology degree already. So you're already very self-serving for that. I already had a nutrition background because I had learned about it all through high school because I was so geeked out, and I got certified as a trainer right out of high school. So all of the biomechanics of training, all of the nutrition courses, everything I had already taken. So for me, I was very interested in the cellular developmental molecular biology at UC Santa Barbara. I ended up looking at a bunch of different UC schools, and it was the best bang for the buck. It still is, in my opinion. And UC Santa Barbara is a top 30 school in the nation. And which is funny because my wife went to UCLA, which is considered the number one public school in the nation. And UC Santa Barbara is just 90 minutes away. And my emphasis in the biological sciences really came from understanding like how, everything that was intracellular, because it was very, very fascinating to me because I had mastered the nutrition portion of it so easy. It was so easy for me, and I absorbed it so early on that I wanted to know things on the cellular level. So again, thinking that I'm going to eventually probably end up putting my hat into doing the MCAT and going to med school. I was like, okay, I'm going to get my degree in biology, and then I can turn around and apply to med school. So that's why I started with that whole system. But the whole time while I was away at UC Santa Barbara after transferring from a local junior college while I was a trainer in the Bay Area to Santa Barbara, which is about 4.5 hours south of the Bay Area. What I ended up doing was I ended up doing coaching, which what we call now kind of like online coaching. But this was back in the mid 90s. So while I was in college. So back then, it was more about me getting photographs of the clients that I had up in the Bay Area that still wanted to check in with me. And I was helping pay my way through school that way by getting just a FedEx envelope with hard copy pictures. And when the hard copy pictures weren't coming, it was a little like disposable camera, and I'd go down to Walgreens and I would
Wow.
basically go in and do the 1 hour photo, come back, go to the gym, drop it off, come back. And then I got so sick of doing the 1 hour photo, I told everybody else, you guys do the 1 hour photo and then send it to me, send me the hard copies. And I still probably have some in some places of the hard copies that they would send me. Because again, we didn't have the digital formats that we have now. I'm doing this on an iPhone with you. You're probably on your laptop, and you have the ability to do, 4K, right? Back then, there was AOL dial-up. It was a boop beep beep.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And you're like, that's it. So I would be able to do the emails back and forth with the diet changes, but the photographs, because they wouldn't come through email because they're just too big. The files were too large. So what I would do is get the hard copies on photograph, and then I was doing the remote coaching through email, and I would do that after hours while I was going to school full time at UC Santa Barbara getting my bio degree.
So in the beginning, it was really just a way to pay for school. That was
Oh
like
yeah.
the idea was I'm just going to pay for school for this and go to and be a doctor.
Yeah, but it was a way of doing it. And it originally happened was that I had left all of my clients to other trainers when I left because I was doing nutrition as well as physical coaching, right? Personal training there in the Bay Area. And then I would just do it after hours or before classes or in between classes. If I had a 4 hour break or more, then I would go ahead and book a couple of sessions at the local gym that I was working at. What ended up happening was that when I moved, a lot of the clients called me and said, look, the trainer you gave me was awesome for that 1 hour session, but they don't do the nutrition like you do. They don't dial in the food program. They don't do like what supplements to take pre-workout, when should I time my protein? Do you mind doing that? But I can still train with the person you have me on, and then maybe you can give me the suggestions on the workouts. So I said, sure. So I went ahead and said, let me put something together. And then that's how I started my online coaching. It was just something that, okay, it was a necessity to someone who I'd worked with in the past. And then the other one started calling me saying, hey, I heard you're doing this. Can we do it as well? And then it just ended up being a thing.
That's wild. And
Yeah.
to give some background into that space, right? When you and I were working together, like one of the things that Suzanne said, she had hired another coach. She was training and doing shows at the same time, and she was at a show that I was at. Like she was competing with another coach, and you were there with me as a client. And she watched the way you interacted with me. She watched the over achievement of coaching, like the hands-on, the eyeball to eyeball time, the way you wanted to handle me as a client, as a paying customer. And you left the room one day and she goes, that is the way it's supposed to be done. Like it was just so much different than everybody else. And what I'm hearing is the root of that started even at the very, very beginning. It was just like way more detailed, way more hands-on, way more individualized for the customer that was looking for that particular thing.
Yeah, but that has to do with the fact that obsessed about trying to be the best, not trying to be the biggest when it came to whatever I was doing. I didn't want to have the most amount of clients. I just wanted to have the best clients. And so when other trainers would have 5 athletes at a show and a bodybuilding show, 3 to 5 athletes is a lot, but you'd have 5, 10, 15 nowadays. turning people pro is not a big deal because there's so many different divisions, and now it's two per weight class. So, turning pros is like, going out and getting donuts through a drive-through. It's not that big of a deal. Winning Olympias is a whole different animal. And it was, for me, in the beginning stages, turning pro was big, and it was about the time you had to put in. And it wasn't, the coaching ended up becoming such a huge aspect of the relationships I built. I mean, I have some of the best relationships ever. I mean, Phil Heath was in my wedding. Not only did we, I was a part of his 7 Olympia titles and that journey that I've been so blessed to be a part of, or Jay's comeback year, Jay Cutler, who did the quad stomp that year. He had lost, nobody has lost, and won again, even up till this day right now, after 50 years of being in the Mr. Olympia competition being in existence, except for Jay Cutler in 2009, which I was able to be blessed enough to be a part of his team and coaching him for that big comeback. But one thing is the fact that it wasn't about just numbers. It was really about, for me, putting those relationships together, and the relationships have stood the test of time. We all have our own businesses, we all do everything, but whenever we see each other, it's like literally like day one. It's hugs and high fives, and it's like, yeah, man, we kicked a lot of ass. We kicked a lot of ass. So, and that's, I got to be a part of these legends journey, right? And I'm sure that, Michael Jordan and his trainer, and you got, a lot of the guys that were part of Tiger Woods' journey, Michael Jordan's, anybody who's been a legend in their given industry. You get to be a little piece of that, and it's a very exciting thing to be a part of, and very proud to be coaching someone so legendary. So I got to do that. But the reason why I got to do that is because I treated everybody like family. It wasn't a number. It wasn't the money that I was about to make from it. It was really just the sense of accomplishment. And I think that's the biggest takeaway for me. Because if you really chase a passion versus a paycheck, you're going to have a whole different output. You're going to have a whole different place where you're going to end up in the world when you do that. And that's how I, started my supplement company. Same thing. I made it for my athletes when I started it out. It was never about like going out there and making mass products for everybody. And now I'm going to be the 18th year I've been in business, but I started in my kitchen just so that I could make sure my athletes had the best, products, so that they would give them a leg up, even if it's just an extra 1 or 2%. And you were there in the early ages. I mean, days. It was 2008 when I started that, and you and I started working together in 2011. So you know all about where that started. It was one product, one flavor. You can have anything you want as long as it was great, you know. Or as
I,
Jay would call it, the purple powder.
it's so funny you say that because I've shared a lot of my experiences with you, like my journey with you of what it looks like to be, because you speak on it. It's about how are you interacting with the customer? What's the relationship you're building with your end result customer? And I was like, yeah, I said, to let you know what that looks like in the bodybuilding space, Hany would send me these packages with no label and tell me when to take it and what to write down and how to, like, what are you feeling? How do you feel? How's your workout? All this kind of stuff. And I said, and all it was raw ingredients. And then
Mhm.
he would come out with these amazing products that everybody would say, man, it's the best flavor ever. And all I could taste was the raw ingredient. I'm like, no, I know what's behind all that. you know?
Yeah, there was a
Uh,
lot of you were a lab rat for all the raws before they ended up getting flavored, and it was quite the ordeal for you.
It was, but what I will say is being a part of that, you talked about it. It's building that relationship. Like I had a tremendous amount of trust of what you were sending me, like and what the end result would be is going to be the best for what I was trying to achieve at the time. And yeah, it's like to me watching you, you said it's about relationship. Like I think that's a massive entrepreneurial lesson. Is it's always about the relationship. My guys are selling cars. Well, it's about the relationship with that end result customer and how do they cultivate that relationship. And as you
Yeah.
cultivated relationships, they got to be a product of the products you were producing, not just your care and your loving and treating them and coaching them really, really honestly and really, really well. But it was this idea of I'm also going to put the best product in front of you to get you the best result possible.
Well, you build trust, right? So
Mhm.
that's the other thing that you didn't mention was the fact that one of the reasons I worked with you is because you're a car guy. You know what I mean? And you know, I'm a car guy. And so when Jay said to me, "Hey, I got this guy," and he's like, "Who is he?" And he's like, "Oh, he's this bodybuilder. He's not going to, turn around and win the Olympia anytime soon, but he's a good guy." And I said, "Okay, well, that checks my first box. He's a good guy." And coming from Jay, that means a lot from Jay Cutler. The second thing was that he turned around and says, "Oh, and by the way, he's a car guy." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, that pretty much, that sums it up. He's a good guy and he's a car guy. Then we have some stuff to talk about. You know what I mean?" So, and but yeah, but talking about the relationship starts off with trust, right? And that's what it is. So, paralleling your business with sales. If you are turning around and making it so not to feel like it's a sale anymore, but it's a relationship transaction, what ends up happening is that they just go, "You're my guy." Right? It's just like when you called me about any supplement that you wanted to try. "Hey, have you heard of this? What's going on with this?" Hey, whatever it was that you had heard in the industry that you were going to ingest in any way, shape, or form, you would call me because I was your guy, right?
100%.
Right. So when your sales guys or anyone's sales guys, they're listening to this, are turning around and working with their end consumer, because of the passion that salesperson exudes, what's going to end up happening is you're going to have a business relationship that's going to end up becoming almost like a family member, where he's like, "This is my car guy, right? I'm just gonna trade in my car with this gentleman because I trust him." Okay. Yeah, I could get a little bit more money doing it here. Or, yeah, I'm sure that I could go somewhere else and drive 3 states away and get, say $500 or whatever it is. But at that point, it's not worth it because this is my guy.
Right.
And that's where you want to end up. You want to do that. And then I did it in a way where eventually my coaching services and what everybody saw trusted me to start a supplement company and not have big names, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, all these guys were always at some point a part of a supplement company, and they're the biggest people in Hollywood. But those companies weren't always the most successful, and not because of who they were, but sometimes you have to connect at a different level with certain types of consumers. And the consumer base that I grew from was very grassroots, right? That bodybuilder, the trainers, and they go, "You know what? We tried Hany's things and we trust them." So when you're doing that and you're taking lessons from what I've done, it's really at being able at that ground level of building that relationship so that it's no longer just business transactional, but hey, I'm willing to try out anything that you want to be able to give. It could be a wellness product like greens. It could be turned around and be a multivitamin, not just a pre-workout that's going to get you more pumped, or a fat burner that's supposed to help you lean out or act as a thermogenic before you do your cardio, like my athletes. So now I have 175 products and I'm in 75 countries, but I'm
That's
very proud of that.
you should be like, I mean, like you said, started in the kitchen and now
Mhm.
it's a, it's a, it's a, a big name in the industry. And so you said it, that 1% better, 1% better, like, creating something, knowing how our bodies work, knowing the science behind things, and giving us products that were going to make us just that much better. Which was something nobody else did. Like, that's for sure. That's your, that's a copy, could be a copyrighted thing. This is how Hany does it, right? But when I look at your client list, like you mentioned, Jay,
Mhm.
you know, that probably one of the most famous pictures in all of bodybuilding history is the quad stomp in 2009.
Yes.
Right? Jay did the quad stomp, but you're responsible for the body that was able to produce that picture. Like, he did the
Oh,
work,
he
but
did the work.
he did
He
the
did the
work,
work 100%.
but you gave him the roadmap to get there. And it was the best Jay Cutler that's ever been on stage to this day, in my humble opinion, right? By far the best that's ever been on stage. So he was somebody who had worked to what had and achieved the goal of Mr. Olympia. And then you come along and, okay, well, let's dial it up a notch. You've done the same. Like, Bumgarner had somebody other than you in the beginning, correct?
Bumstead. Yeah. Bumstead. Yeah.
Bumstead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yes. It was his brother-in-law. It was his
yeah,
brother-in-law. Yep.
yeah,
Chris Bumstead.
yeah,
Yep.
dialing it up a notch.
Hmm.
Nicole Wilkins, right? When
Same thing.
dude, her first year with you, her best year on stage by a milestone, So you're taking these guys that are already elite performing athletes and working with them and saying, hey, there's more there. Like I think in the entrepreneurial space, a lot of times we get comfortable in where we're at, like this mode of like, hey, we're making it. What worked yesterday will work again tomorrow, and that kind of thing. How do you see that playing into every aspect of taking someone who has achieved something great and going, there's more there. Let me squeeze some more juice out of that lemon, and then taking products that you've created. I've watched you develop. Like your pre-workout now is not the same as it like EVP
Hmm.
today is
Hmm.
not the same as EVP from 2008, right?
Yeah.
Still great product,
Yeah.
but
Well,
way different. But it's just this constant evolution.
that's right. That's the word for it, right? I mean, that's actually kind of where we got the Evogen was part of it, was the evolution part of the first three letters, the Evo part.
Mhm.
I think the way you got to look at it is that, at least this is the way I look at it, is that if you're not going forward, you're going backwards, right? Because the competition will eat you up. It doesn't matter who it is. For me, every year I have a guy in the Super Bowl, right? And that Super Bowl, was the bodybuilding Super Bowl, which is where we sat together, right, at the Mr. Olympia competition, you know, and myself, Farron is my wife, you, your wife, my son, which has been, he's 12 years old and he's been to 13 Olympias, right? I mean, it's like, it's crazy because he's been at every Olympia since he was in Farron's tummy.
Yeah.
And so he grew up in this industry too. And what we immerse ourselves in things that we are passionate about. So if you're passionate, you're not looking for Mondays going, shit, I'm dreading it. You're looking at it like going, let's fricking go.
Right.
Let's fricking go. Right. Like I'm keeping this PG because normally I wouldn't, you know, because there might
Hey,
be somebody who's listening to this with some
yeah.
kids in the background.
On Andy's
But
podcast, we'll drop it.
yeah, 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 absolutely. My good friend Andy Frisella would
Yeah.
definitely not be filtering that out. Um, and the way you got to look at it is that that's the whole thing. Now, that's usually the mindset of, and not, I'm saying usually, not always, of the owner. But then it's another thing as a leader to turn around and take that mindset and be able to really create a energy in the room to get your team members to rally and constantly being able to do that. And again, I know because after 18 years, I know I have Nick, who's my vice president of operations. He's been with me for 14 of those 18 years, right? He came on board about 4 years after I started the brand. And it was very early on. And I think I had like three or four products. And now again, he moved here to Dallas in our new headquarters. We went from 4,000 square feet to 44,000 square feet here in Dallas. And the biggest thing about it is that you got to constantly reinvent yourself. And you have to always feel that urge to evolve. And that's why, going back to the word evolution, you have to evolve, because if you don't, dinosaurs didn't. And they were the biggest, baddest mofos on the planet. And again, the ones that did are still here, and somehow we were popping out of there at some point. But when you look at the evolutionary process, what ends up happening is the companies that tend to fade are the ones that lose that spark and that passion. So you need to be able to reignite that individually within yourself. It doesn't matter if you are just a sales guy or if you're just cleaning up the dealership or whatever it is that you guys are doing that are listening to this podcast. You need to be able to evolve and say, I'm going through this now because look, man, I trained a lot of people for free in the beginning just to prove myself. Now I can charge whatever I want, right? I have a 7, 8 year waiting list to be able to work one-on-one with me that just keeps getting longer, but doesn't end up getting shorter. And I'm very blessed because of it. But I remember when I would take anybody and everybody just so I can be able to utilize them as like a billboard for change. And look what I was able to do this with this woman who has 3 kids. And look what I could do with this Olympic weightlifter that has nothing to do with bodybuilding, but it wants to increase performance. Or what look what I've done with this teenager because his mom wanted me to work with him, or this NFL star that is trying to get an extra year or two out of his contract in San Francisco. And I was able to do that because what I did was I knew what I was good at and I knew what I wasn't. And I tried to focus on making sure to strengthen my weaknesses, but at the same time, then just like if I would have went into medicine, which I eventually obviously didn't, right after college, I graduated and I decided to move up back to the Bay Area, and I worked for a pharmaceutical company. I got hired to become a pharmaceutical rep. I flew out back east. and ended up getting trained. And they liked the fact that I had the biology background, and I knew so much about nutrition, and I got this amazing job. And 3 months into it, I hated it. I hated it because I found out what it was really about. And it was really just trying to manipulate doctors into writing prescriptions, where I come from more of the wellness side. So
Right.
I thought that that was kind of like not really in line with my core values and beliefs. But what it did teach me was it taught me how to how the system works. And again, I take every experience and think of it as a learning opportunity. And what ended up happening was I ended up going back into coaching, and went into coaching, and also had a couple of other gigs that I did during the day. And while I was doing the coaching, because again, it wasn't enough to be able to sustain, especially in the Bay Area. And I remember doing both. And then at some point there was a crossroads, and they wanted me to move my old day job and to Phoenix, and they said, "Hey, we want to move the office to Phoenix. It's cheaper than the Bay Area." And I said, "No, no, I think I'm just going to go ahead and do what I do at night." And they're like, "What do you do at night?" And I said, I coach these athletes that are called bodybuilders, and I also have a lot. I had some celebrity guys that were coming up and coming guys that were doing some stuff, and up in California, and it was great. And it was something that I ended up just doing full time, and I made my passion into my career, and then blossomed that out, and then extended it into the supplements, and was doing several different gigs at once, and then eventually started to pick a path. And now obviously we've been blessed enough to be able to do several different companies, so it's been awesome.
It's been fun to watch actually, and the lesson I get from that is nothing was ever too small, and it was always there's something to be taken from it. Like I am perfecting my craft. Like you think about what you just said with the number of types of people you mentioned, a mom of three, an Olympic
Hmm.
athlete, a teenager, like, and I guarantee you, just because I know you, those are all real case studies, right?
Yes.
But every one of those case studies gave you a level of knowledge that you were able to apply in what your passion ended up being. Like, and like I said, you said it, the evolutionary process that you even were able to carry into the athlete. Like there is more there. Let's evolve. What needs to change? Where can we improve on? But yeah, it's been fun to watch, dude. It's been real fun to watch.
Yeah, trainers don't understand. I get this all the time because I travel all around doing seminars, and people always ask me, they said, "I want to be you." And I said, "Look, if you want to become someone like what I've done, the best thing to do," and they say, what do I got to do that? And I said, learn as many types of physiques as possible, then pick a path. It's like becoming a doctor, right? You don't just say, "Hey, look, all of a sudden I'm going to go straight out of, medical school into heart surgery." You have to become a good physician, and then you specialize, right? So what ends up happening is that you may think that you want to become a pediatrician, but you go into plastic surgery. You may think that I'm going to go into plastic surgery, but you end up becoming a psychiatrist, right? There's a lot of different doctors out there, but you're going to end up figuring out what you like to do. That's why it's always good to be able to have a wide breadth of knowledge, to work with as many types of physiques as possible and athletes as possible, and even housewives that are turning around and trying to get into their best shape. That's okay, because you may enjoy down the road working with a certain demographic over what you thought that you might have liked. Because again, be careful what you wish for, because everybody wants to go out there and sell exotic cars until the market bombs out on exotic cars. You go, "God, man, I wish I was selling those damn Hondas," you know. you know
That's
so
true.
so that's what I'm saying. So there's always a flashy side to everything, but you have to kind of go through and understand the base knowledge. And that always goes back to me learning the base understanding of cell biology. And it always comes back to all of the things that learning how to read studies, how to be able to do, read clinical studies to see how good they were in terms of setting up. So like, okay, who funded it? What were the outcomes? Was it double blind? What was going on? What were the different ways of being able to really take that information and extract it? Was what that taught me. Because everyone said, "Why'd you go to college?" Well, first of all, I wanted to become a physician, but second of all, it taught me so much more. Number one, it teaches you how to be an adult, but number two, it also teaches you how to be able to understand things at a molecular level. For me, was really important because I really felt that I had kind of, learned a lot already from a lot of different courses that I had taken for all the different types of certifications that were very, very popular back then.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking about someone listening to this going, I thought they just told people how to work out and like how many carbs and protein and like there's so much more. Um, and I'm going to touch on one subject because I want to be cognizant of your time. And I know like you're like me, man, you're running 9 million miles an hour all the time. You announced stepping away from coaching at professionals this year.
Hmm.
But when I'm hearing you go through this list of your life, of what this journey's been from collecting Polaroids and like when I say that sounds weird, collecting Polaroids in the mail, like you're like it's
Hmm.
like nobody needs to check your search history, but collecting pictures right in the mail, having to go get them developed to where now, like you say, and I'll even say like there was the last year I competed, I got really frustrated because I felt like you were looking at my pictures and not being able to see them because the quality wasn't there. And I got really, really frustrated and sent you pictures. And you're like, never send me those again. I know you remember the story I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but as I'm listening, you talk through this journey, like the passion for helping people work on their physique is obvious. Like it's that, like you said, it's the evolution, watching the evolution. And you're still working with people. It's just not
Yeah.
professionals. How much more fulfilling do you find that than working with a professional, or is it just a different type of fulfillment?
It's a different type of fulfillment because the pressure of winning the best bodybuilding show in the world every single year was getting to the point where it was hurting my family life. And that's one thing that I didn't feel like it was worth the trade, right? So for me, it was a blessing to have guys that were number one and number two in the world, right? Like I had the number one guy and the number two guy. Not only was I coaching them, but I was also sponsoring them. And they were Evasion athletes, and it was fantastic. And then I got to work with the biggest athlete in the world, which is Chris Bumstead, and 25 million followers on social media, and guy's got world-renowned guy, and a hell of a guy. And I got to work with him as well. And he was getting ready to retire, and he hasn't even just was barely breaking 30. He hadn't even hit 30 yet, and he was retiring. And he had won six Mr. Olympias, the last three with myself, the other three with his brother-in-law, who did an amazing job with him. And the way that I look at it was that I was like, my son, I have one child, Cameron, he's now 12 years old. And what I realized was that it was just the anxiety of picking up the phone and checking the phone every 2 hours all through the entire summer, the whole, through the entire year, but mostly those 12 weeks. My staff at Evision would suffer, my family would suffer, my mental, is just completely 100% fixated on, okay, somebody's workout for that day, somebody's meal plan, their update, what's going on, what are we going to check? So it was just this amount of pressure to win, win, win. And kind of like the song says, no matter what, right? And I did it. But then I realized there wasn't much difference between when I won 20 Olympia titles, 23, 25, 30 Olympia titles. What I realized was that I'm not going to be able to take the time back. Okay.
Oh,
And my son is going to only want to hang out with me for X number of years. I've probably got about 3 to 5 years left of when I made that decision this last year. And I said, I want to be able to take my family on a trip to Europe. We can go and spend time there. We can go on vacations. We can do all these things that I would never do in the past because I cannot do that. Because again, I've got so many responsibilities between the athletes, the staff, and everything else. So what I did was I really kind of reprioritized. And by doing that, my actual business has grown, right? And the reason why it's grown is because the things that I felt were most important really weren't as important anymore as they were years ago. And that was something that was very, very eye-opening for me because I kept hearing it from people that were close to me that had a lot of experience in the world of just business. And they had said, look, that got you there, but you got to transcend that, right? You have to understand you're evolving. You keep winning thinking that the reason why you're as successful as you are is because you keep winning. No, it's now you got to do something with that. And that was the tipping point where I said, I want to continue to work with all these people that follow me, and not just the three people that I had at the moment that had to go in there and win first, second, and third place at the Mr. Olympia, right? And or win their class in this and win their class in this and go one and two. And the reason I was able to see the forest from the trees was because I'm seeing my son get older. And I'm like, this window is just going to narrow and narrow and narrow. And I do not want to regret not giving my son the time, because what's the point at that point? So that they can turn around and say, well, your dad won 28 or 30 Olympias, but then he didn't get to spend any time with you. And it's just, I knew that I was going to end up regretting it. So I wanted to be able to be present. So that was something that just, I was turning 50, and I was again, that also helped as well. And then also my own health, my health had suffered. So I took such poor care of myself. Like, the cobbler's kids are the last to get shoes. I was literally the epitome of that. And I felt like all of the boxes were checked against me. And I, created my own issues. And I was like, okay, I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping, and all for what? So that I can shorten my life, so that I can be able to turn around and say, yeah, look, I was the winningest most coach. I mean, like, no. So let's turn around and let's kind of readdress all the things that are the most important. So what I literally did was I took that list of things that I thought was important and I turned it completely upside down. And then I said, these are the things that need to go in this order. It's like God, family, business, everything else,
That's
right? And that's just kind of how it went. So I feel like at this point now, again, it's been a great opportunity. It happened initially, that thought process happened when we moved here to Dallas,
Mhm.
um, in the DFW area, and that was in the middle of the pandemic. And I feel like what happened was that evolutionary period, and in the next season of our lives, myself, my wife, I just really wanted to be there with Nas and Cameron. So I felt like that's what it was. And maybe, who knows, later on, maybe, when Cameron goes away to school and something happens, and you never know. I'm never going to say never, but at this point right now, I enjoy training again. I enjoy, like, being able to give tips to all my followers, having 1 million on YouTube, 3 million on Instagram. I think it's like 1.5 million on TikTok. All of these things are great, but I like to be able to give all of these youngins, a lot of the knowledge that I have to share with them, instead of just focusing so much intently on those three people, so that I can put another notch in the belt. So that's kind of what ended up creating this kind of evolutionary period in my life.
Gotcha. Well, I said it to you a couple years ago when we sat and kind of had this conversation. This was before you said you're like, you didn't even tell me, like, of course you wouldn't, but I'm going to retire. But I said to you, you're the most settled that I've seen you. Like I've known you for a while, and you've always been all gas, no brakes.
Hmm.
And I think it's now all gas, no brakes. It's just what you're gassing towards. That's how I see it. So, but congratulations on that, entering into this stage. And again, like every great rock band, there may be this final tour 10 years from now that will do one more.
Yeah.
I understand that. But man, it's been a pleasure. Hany, you have been and will continue to be a big part of my life. I can't thank you enough for the gift you gave me of how I showed up when I showed up on stage. Um, I tell everybody the last experience I had when we competed, and which is I hated practicing posing. And I said, and he figured out really, really quickly that I hadn't been posing in the off
Yep.
season. And I said, and he talked to me like I was a kindergartner, but I deserved everything that came out of his mouth. And I said, but at the end of it, when he's waiting off stage with a towel and hugged my neck and said, I did the best I could, you absolutely always showed up that way. It was always, you gave us, all your athletes, you gave us your best, man. And I just want to say thank you for it. And we love Farna, Suzanne and I, we love you both, and Cameron. And it's just great to see you be at this level, and just know, like, I love to hear you say, I shifted everything and it got better. It was like,
It
because
did.
everybody's, I think most founders, right? Founders of
Mhm.
businesses are afraid, man, if I take my hands off of something, it's just going to collapse. And I think what you've done is you surrounded yourself with some great people. You talked about Eva Jeanette Like he Evogen's even part of his name. Like people know
Yeah.
him as Evogen
He
Nick.
was a Nick, right?
And but you've surrounded yourself with some really good people who love you because you love them well and you've led them well. So congratulations on this next season, bro. I appreciate you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for having me, and thank you for all the kind words. And it's been a great, it's a testament to also things that you've done because your evolution. I know it was hard for you to stop competing, and
Yeah.
it was like because again, when you compete at such a high level, even when I say even high level, I'm not talking about just Olympia. Like you are trying to go in there and do the bigger shows, and those shows they can beat your body up, right? Bringing low body fat and all of those things can be a detriment to your focus because every 2 hours eating, every training twice a day, making sure you're doing cardio twice a day, training in the weight room once, but your body's just spent. It's spent, but you become addicted to that, right? You get just like runners have the runner's high. You go in there and you just want to just see that extra 0.5%, extra 1% every week and just continue. And even though you didn't have the genetics of a Jay or a Phil or anywhere close to it, you made up for it with hard work. And what you did, and this is something that's really characteristic of high level leadership type of just individuals is that you would always know what your limitations were and you weren't sit there and have your head in the clouds, right? You were a person who's being very realistic, and that's where a lot of people get wrong. So whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're an athlete, you got to know what court and what division you're playing in. And then once you've mastered that, then you can turn around and level up. But it's really hard to say, I'm going to be a billionaire tomorrow. But you can say, hey, look, I'm going to go ahead and hit this 50 grand, 100 grand revenue total. I'm going to hit this $250,000. I'm going to hit the $1 million. I'm going to hit the 10 million. I'm going to hit the 100 million. Then you can turn around and hit $1 billion. But if you just turn around and say, I'm going to turn around and be Mr. Olympia, guess what? That's a great idea. But if you turn around and know that your genetics are limited because maybe mom and dad weren't the most blessed with those calves that you needed, then you're going to turn around and need to be able to be a little bit more realistic. So that you had that realistic expectation that really drew me to you to coach you because you knew, say, look, I don't want to turn around and blow sunshine about myself or this and that. I just need to be the best version of me.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, bingo, we can work together.
Yeah. That's exactly what I thought. I for sure knew I could never beat Jay on stage.
I don't know. There's a year or two. It's questionable. You could have maybe, a year or two that he was off.
Oh man. Hany,
Yeah, brother.
thank you, man. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you soon, I'm sure.
Yes, I absolutely, brother.
Oh,
I will talk to you
before
soon.
we go,
Yes. Yes.
I mean, you have a huge audience already, but this audience may be a little different than yours.
Mhm.
If people are interested in like seeing what you do and finding out more
Sure.
about you, what's the best place for them to find you?
Honestly, there's my Instagram's just Hany Rambod, my YouTube, Hany Rambod. If they want to know anything about the supplements, it's Evogen Nutrition. They can go onto Instagram and do that. There's also the websites. If you just go in there and you Google, I'm sure you'll find us. So always sharing as much information as possible on social media as well as on YouTube, so they can just go ahead and check it out.
Cool. And I would recommend, even if you've never been in the bodybuilding space, listen to the truth. There's a lot of good lessons in that.
Yeah. So there's going to be, we're widening it up too, because it was very bodybuilding centric. It still is with some of the physique stuff, but we're going to be bringing on very, much wider guests. We got to get you on next time you're out here too. And we can talk, we got some good stories. We got some good stories.
We do have some good stories.
Yes.
All right, brother.
Yes.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
man.
Thank you, brother. Okay. Take care.
See you.